Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth and the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case. Witchetty. Grub servings. 7. Preparation. Time varies based on resistance of ingredients. Ingredients. 1. Eye of newt. 1 toe of frog. 150 grams wool of bat. 1 tongue of dog. 10 scales of dragon. A pinch of dead man's blood. A drop of a virgin's tear. 1 swollen, pus-filled, witchetty grub for flavor. Preparation. A. Acquire pre-selected ingredients from their natural habitats. Successful extraction requires careful attention to prevent accidental damage. 1. Newt. Net the newt in a crumbling inner-city neighborhood. Still in his teens, the newt is most often found in the company of the local drug-dealing street gang he aspires to be part of. His watchful eyes make him a valuable resource. His fresh-faced appearance keeps him discreet. Optimal time to secure is while he keeps watch for the law and rival gang members outside a dilapidated apartment complex, casting furtive glances into alleys. His attention focused on the addicts and intimidating shadows that wander and lurk there. 2. Frog. Fetch the frog. At the edge of an abandoned industrial rooftop on the outskirts of the city. Her athleticism and powerful 20-something-year-old legs have made her a viral sensation, courtesy of elaborate, self-recorded parkour videos in which she scales buildings, leaps between rooftops, and climbs towering structures. The tattooed, shaven-head frog is at her most vulnerable while occupied with setting up her camera gear to record, having practiced her jumps, tested the winds, and psyched herself up for a stunt. 3. Bat. Bag the bat in the darkness and privacy of her lavish bedroom, whilst she slumbers in the soothing shawl of night. Her golden locks, the envy of all at her Ivy League university, will be glowing around her head like a halo on a Hungarian goose-down pillow, while she dreams of fame and stardom as a singer. Take care to wrap the bat's hair neatly around her head 3 times before removing her from her covers and spiriting her away through the unlatched window of her family's Haven Heights home. 4. Dog. Drag the dog from the smoking hut at the rear of a downtown comedy hall, where he smokes alone after a rough set. An up-and-coming stand-up comedian, his wit and sharp tongue are capable of cutting down hecklers with cruel precision. With thick skin but flimsy material, the dog can be secured when the night sighs with disappointment his smartest punchlines of the evening, the edgy, heckler-baiting insults fresh on his lips, unalert, his mind preoccupied with feelings of inadequacy. He will prove easy to batter and snare. 5. Dragon. Extract the dragon from the dressing room of a seedy adult film studio, where she sits before a mirror, her reflection betraying the exhaustion in her eyes. Once a promising young woman, the dragon is trapped in the heartless world she was forced into by debt and destitution, performing for cameras and men. As she waits to be recalled to set, white powder residue under her nose, flawless skin glistening under harsh lights, she can be subdued with a chloroform-soaked rag. 6. Dead man and virgin. The dead man and the virgin can be obtained together from the dead man's car as it idles at the edge of a cliff overlooking the bay. The dead man will be fresh from a strenuous workout, basking in the admiration of the virgin, a pleasant distraction. The infatuated virgin, surprised to have secured a popular male's attention, is keen to impress for validation. His cockiness and her insecurity are the perfect combination of toxicity, making them vital ingredients for the pot. As the virgin is coerced to take things to the next stage, anesthetic gas introduced to the vehicle through its exhaust pipe will render them ripe for the picking. 7. Witchetty grub. Remove from the stockpile in the larder, as previously instructed to prepare. B. Once acquired, transport ingredients to cellar and confine. Take care to label correctly. Wrong identification will result in incorrect ingredients introduced to the pot, spoiling the potency of the broth. C. Inflict sufficient emotional trauma over the course of 24 hours to ensure ingredients are primed. Fear and confusion should be present before proceeding. Screams, pleas for mercy, and despair are key to achieving optimal tenderness. Cooking instructions. Step 1. Eye of newt. Prep. Approach the newt chained in a corner, his fearful blue irised eyes wide, his youthful terror and questioning of the rebellious attitude that led to him falling in with the wrong crowd when he could have stayed home with parents who offered love and tried to teach him right from wrong, will serve as a solid base flavor. Marinate. Let him feel the knife's serrated touch against his cheek, heightening his fear and emptying his bladder. Remain silent as you peer into his soul and exhale fetid breath onto his face. Smirk as you move the tip of the blade to the swollen, tear-infused bag beneath his left eye and start to shimmy it in. Allow the newt to scream as you pierce the eyeball, making your black, crooked teeth the last thing it sees. Harvest. Extract the eye swiftly, ensuring it stays moist. Sever the optic nerve with teeth and drop the excavated eyeball into the cauldron of bubbling broth, allowing its partner to watch from the head it remains housed in. Step 2. Toe of frog. Prep. Open the door to the cage of the naked frog, whose legs twitch as they struggle against their restraints. Her death-defying leaps and infinite recklessness have been reduced to paralysis and nervous kicks. This now caged force of once unstoppable urban adventure will add a tangy zest to the mix. Marinate. Trace a wart-covered finger along the side of a foot, then over each one of her toes, drawing out a series of gasps. Let her realize that no jump can save her as she shirks away. Grab the foot firmly and place the blade against its biggest toe, making it quiver and curl. Watch the frog's face contort and savor her cries as the knife digs deep into the skin. Harvest. Sever the toe at the joint. Allow it to twitch in your fingers as she cries in pain. Eyes locked on the almost insignificant but oh so important digit that aids with her balance. Drop the wriggling toe into the cauldron, letting its spasms add ripples to the broth. Step 3. 150 g of wool of bat. Prep. Release the bat from her crate and comb out her lustrous locks, tangled and matted from confinement. The scent of confusion and fear for her life is sickly sweet, but the odor of her wounded pride outweighs it. Even in captivity, the bat's thoughts fixate on her unwashed hair, the long, golden strands that are the source of her appetizing appearance. Marinate. Run fingers through hair, untangling strands with care and soothing the bat with gentle shushes. Admire its luster. Appreciate its silky, smooth feel. Let your withered flesh tingle under its softness. Watch her grimace through tears, trying to coax out some mercy. Then grip a handful of hair and yank back her head. Lift the shears and slide their rusted edges either side of the strands, savoring the scream that slips forth with the snip. Harvest. Shear off 10 handfuls of finest silken hair and place on weighing scales until 150 grams of the bat's identity are harvested. Let her sob uncontrollably as she watches her beauty diminish, mourning the loss of her hair like the frog mourns her toe. Toss the locks into the cauldron and stir, imbuing the soup with a peppery nuance. Step 4. Tongue of dog. Prep. Leave the dog tied to his chair, blindfold in place, but remove the gag from his mouth. His trademark smirk will be absent, replaced with the babbling pleas that come from an understanding that no witty repartee can save him. Allow him to lick his dry lips one last time, moistening them with the mock-yielding lubrication that gives them their tartness. Marinate. Let the dog wield his words like weapons, shouting, cursing, trying to bargain with a devil. Stand quietly as he struggles against his restraints, powerless in the face of unyielding malice. When his adrenaline-fueled vitriol falters, take his chin in a vice-like grip and tug his tongue from his mouth. Slide the shears over the muscle and ease them together. Harvest. Slice through the tongue, severing it cleanly at the base. Watch crimson blood spurt forth, filling the dog's mouth and coating his chin. The ragged stump will quiver as he chokes, his sharp tongue reduced to a useless lump. Toss the fleshy piece into the broth, seasoning it with the sourness of insults. Step 5. 10 scales of dragon. Prep. Remove the hood from the head of the dragon, where she lies strapped to a metal gurney. Dark circles under her eyes mar her otherwise flawless skin and the exotic looks that brought her success. Her fingers tremble from the withdrawal, gnawing at her veins, while the makeup caked on her face fails to conceal the bitterness that came from a life she never wanted. Bitterness that will add complexity to the brew. Marinate. Stand behind the dragon and caress her cheeks, pressing into plump, pillowy skin. Feel her body freeze as your nails scratch the surface. Hear her breathing quicken as she wonders what new hell is about to unfold. No words will leave her lips, even when the razor is brought into view and left to hover over her nose. But the flicker of horror in her eyes will betray her terror. Bring the blade down and slice through her supple cheek like butter. Harvest. Carve 5 1/3 strips of skin from each cheek. As her flesh peels away, suppressed screams will at last fill the cellar, and blood will soften the dried-up makeup on her face. Drop each strip into the cauldron, watching as they sink into the broth, the beauty that defined her, infusing the mixture with a savory depth. Step 6. A pinch of dead man's blood. Prep. Circle the dead man as he dangles from a meat hook, kicking and thrashing. This man, this bully, this self-obsessed, so-called alpha male who has spent his life stepping on others, viewing women as objects and treating people as conquests, will add an acrid taste to the blend, which, when balanced with the richness of the other ingredients, will create something truly sensational. Marinate. Lunge from the front and use shears to cut his shirt from waist to neck. Expose chiseled abs and toned chest, then replace shears with dagger and start to stab. Apply slight pressure at first, tenderizing the flesh with shallow punctures, enough to extract delicate beads of blood. The dead man's bravado will crumble as the jabs become deeper. Wait for the realization that he cannot escape to appear in his eyes. Then draw the dagger back and plunge it with full force into his chest. Harvest. Guide the blade through ribs into the dead man's heart. Watch the fire in his eyes fade as his life-giving treacle spills out. With the dagger protruding from his chest, hold a tarnished teaspoon close to the wound. Wait for his last wheezing breath to rattle out, then catch a drop of syrup in the spoon, drizzling it into the cauldron to add pungency. Step 7. A drop of virgin's tear. Prep. Release the virgin from the cupboard under the stairs. Take her by the arm and drag her from the dark into the cellar. As her eyes adjust to the light, let her witness the gruesome sight of her dead boyfriend hanging from a hook, blood beneath him. Marvel at the way in which she mourns him and howls in torment, her naivety and emotional dependency preventing her from seeing he is no loss, her saved innocence promising a nectarous punch. Marinate, stand back, and let the scene unfold. Listen to the virgin's cries grow louder. Watch her collapse onto the cold, hard floor and crawl away. Witness her growing terror as her eyes go from eyeless newt to toeless frog, from hairless bat to tongueless dog, from red-faced dragon to dangling dead man, again then to you. Approach slowly, sponge in hand, and digya at her tear-soaked cheeks. Harvest. Allow the sponge to be saturated with untainted tears, rich in sorrow. Then leave the virgin to curl up in a ball, covering her ears, squeezing her eyes shut, crying as she tries to deny reality. Carefully squeeze the sponge out over the cauldron, letting her essence and purity drip into the broth, enriching it with subtle, candied sweetness. Step 8. Witchetty grub. Drop the withseti grub into the pot as a final garnish. Stir 6 times. Cover, then leave to ferment. Serving. Decant the concoction into a jar. Screw on a rubber teat, sealing in its rich, aromatic flavor. Suck a single drop into your mouth. Feel your body shudder as the magic flows through it, transforming your hair and your skin, restoring your youth. Indulge a fit of cackling, your voice echoing through the chamber. Then offer a word of gratitude as you depart. Optional flourish. Before leaving, kiss a spell-cast crystal and roll it to the center of the floor. In time, when the ingredients feel brave enough to assist one another, they will turn their traumatized gaze upon it, each seeing in it the future they have been spared. The newt, murdered by his gang after failing as a lookout during a hit. The frog, falling to her death as a result of an overly ambitious jump. The bat, caught in a house fire, her hair igniting to prevent her escape. The dog, stabbed by a heckler after an insult goes too far. The dragon, overdosing to escape the life her looks keep her trapped in. The virgin, dying at the hands of the abusive dead man. Extract from Witchetty Grub, Edition 7. Recipes for preservation. Broths using humane ingredients and ethical processing methods. In the morning light. The earlier days of the apocalypse was only chaos. Death and smoke gripped the air. I could feel it stale all around me. It coated my skin, my clothes, my hair. Fear pulsed through every vein. Terror gripped every muscle. Dread gnawed every brain. It was melted into the eyes of everyone you passed. When would it happen to me? When will I watch it happen to someone I love? What could we have done differently? Thoughts that would plague my mind. Over and over, my new reality. The dead no longer stayed dead, and those bitten became deranged, unreachable. They would rip out their hair, scream into the night, pick the skin off their bones until they would be covered in dark, bloody scabs that never seemed to heal. The worst was when they came for you, their eyes empty pits as they chased after you with never-ending endurance and unnatural speed. Nothing like seeing a crippled old woman hit by a truck going 40 mph, only to rise again unfazed, keeping pace with a teenager as she drags her mangled foot behind her. The only advantage left was the inability to use their brains. They couldn't climb ladders or trees. They couldn't open doors or sneak through windows. And in this world, we had to use every advantage we could get. In those early days, everyone still held on to their humanity. The memories of their old life still fresh. I remember thinking that things may eventually go back to normal. Eventually, where my biggest problem was maybe forgetting my lunch at home, or something as juvenile as what to wear to my meeting. However, everything this new world touched was tainted. Cities burned, homes abandoned, our population destroyed, leaving only a handful of us left. Fortunate would not a word I would use for the survivors. What I was fortunate for, however, was the group I had found a few months prior. They were mostly good people in present standards. We didn't rob from the living. We didn't murder the innocent or strike down the weak. We took care of one another and watched each other's back. Everyone pulled their weight, from going on supply runs, to working the garden, to gathering firewood. The group consisted of 15 of us who camped deep in a national forest near Colorado Springs. The supply runs were little more than a day's trip, and our traveling group consisted of 3 people always. I would go as often as I could, preferring to stay on the move to keep my shifting thoughts at bay. We always played it safe and quiet, successfully making it 5 months without losing a member. This should have brought me an ounce of comfort, that it has been a while since we lost someone, so it must mean we were getting wiser. Although all I could think to count on was luck, and any day that luck would eventually run out and disaster would strike. We were camped out in some loft apartments bordering the forest. Paul was on watch duty, while Libby slept on the couch adjacent to mine. I remember falling asleep with blankets wrapped around me that reminded me of a moldy scent that used to cling to clothes that were left in the washer longer than they should have been. It used to bother me using strangers' belongings like their clothes or blankets, especially when the entire place still smelled of old cigar smoke. However, I came to be grateful for the comfort of being in a semi-safe, warm spot for the night. I woke with a jerk, jarring myself out of my typical reoccurring nightmare. Sweat forced my dark hair to cling to my forehead. Panting, I mindlessly reached for the weapon beside me. My hands found only a butcher knife I snagged from the kitchen before falling to sleep. Remembering I had given Paul my handgun for his rotation of watch, since it was less bulky than the shotgun he often slugged around. I tried to calm my racing heart, but something had just felt wrong. I looked over, seeing Libby's still sleeping form. I started to stand, wondering how long I had been asleep. Surely Paul was well past his shift. I reached the window, pulling back the blinds to find gray light pouring through the opening. My heart sank. Paul was supposed to wake me hours ago. I didn't see him anywhere in the still, dark living room. I silently walked over to Libby and gave her a gentle shake before stepping back, knowing she slept with a knife under her pillow. She sat up with a gasp, her blonde hair frizzing out from her worn braid. "Something is wrong. Paul should have woken me hours ago." She stared at me blankly, my words taking a few seconds longer to comprehend as she shook sleep from her mind. "Where is he?" she asked, blinking vigorously. Her green eyes roamed the shadows of the living room. I had liked Libby from the moment I met her. A few months prior, she had found us on her own, days after losing her partner to a minor infection that would have only required a throughout cleaning and maybe a few antibiotic before the outbreak. I've never asked, but she couldn't be much younger than me, her youth apparent in her round cheeks. Paul, on the other hand, was well older than us bother. He looked closer to my father's age, gray hairs dusting his hair and reaching down into his beard. It was out of character for him to wander off on his own. We survived by following strict rules, rules that I know that he knew, because I had gone on more runs with Paul than anyone else in the group. I'm not sure. Help me look around? She nodded and tossed her blanket to the side, wobbling a bit as she stood. Once we were sure that he was nowhere inside, my cold panic really did begin to take hold. We quickly gathered our limited supplies. I carried Paul's shotgun and bag with mine, thankful that he had always packed light. Outside, the light from the sun began to coat everything in a golden hue. The chilled, damp air hung from everything from the night before. I moved as silently as I could, keeping my eyes peeled for any sign of Paul. It was mornings like this that seemed to deceive you and hide the horrors of the world we lived in. I would have loved a day like this, before the outbreak. The birds chirping, the air smelling of fresh pine, the clouds peacefully drifting through the sky. If only a heavy sense, a dread, didn't cling around me, throat like a noose. I rounded the corner of one of the buildings, with Libby close behind. Before me stretched a courtyard. A few trees stretched tall, casting long shadows. The trees were surrounded by a few dry patches of grass and shrubs. I had to shift my head a bit to the right, but I saw him standing there, maybe 50 feet away. His name was on the tip of my tongue. It was nearly out of my mouth in a whisper before something slammed my jaw shut. The way he stood gave me pause. His neck seemed to hang from his shoulders. The way he stood, his arms dangling empty at his sides, unmoving. I began to reach out to stop Libby, but before I could, she slammed into me. The knife she gripped in her hand clanged loudly through the still air into the shotgun strapped to my back. The breath in my lungs left me like someone had just punched me in the stomach. I looked to where Paul stood, horror clogged in my throat, as his head whipped towards us. What had happened next came in a blur. Minutes passed in seconds, my body numb as my instinct took control of my muscles. I grabbed Libby's arm and began to sprint as fast as I could. We ran across a street, hearing Paul's footfalls quickly gaining on us. I refused to turn around. I didn't trust blindly running into one of dark doorways that could hold any number of threats. Instead, my eyes scanned for anything we could climb. Relief spread over me as I spotted a ladder that hung from one of the buildings. I urged Libby ahead of me, letting her climb the ladder first as I turned, planting my feet. I raised the rifle, cocking it back before aiming it at Paul's head. I fired before my fear could choke me. His nearness unsettled me. He dropped hard to the ground, unmoving and lifeless, his body skidding against the pavement, twisting unnaturally as it landed. I turned, climbing the ladder after Libby. My mind played over what I saw. before the bullet ripped through Paul. In a flash, I saw blood that coated Paul's throat, but not from a bite. It looked more like a slash from a blade. I tried to focus on the placement of my hands on the rungs of the ladder, but my mind buzzed. Finally reaching the top, I froze, overlooking onto the roof, where Libby stood motionless. Before her stood a man. His hands reached out before him, as if he were trying to calm a spooked animal. Without thought, I pointed the rifle directly at him. Below me, I was faintly aware of the infected down below, gathering at the base of the ladder. Their frenzies, gargled sounds, reaching my ears. However, all my focus was on the man on the roof. His attention turned to me, and in that instance, shock radiated through me. I knew this man. I recognized his dark brown eyes from another lifetime ago, when his eyes didn't hold circles, bags, and his skin seemed to hang from his bones. He had worked in my department. For years we had walked the same halls and attended the same meetings. His name formed on my mouth, without though, as I slowly lowered the rifle. Jesse? His eyes widened at the sound of his name. He lowered his arms. He looked different, almost unrecognizable, as he stared back at me. Libby and I joined him on the roof. Libby silently sat, staring blankly ahead towards the slow-moving clouds. I, however, stood with Jesse, staring over towards the small town that was now crawling with infected, their screams and snarls echoing through the streets below. "Bad call, firing the rifle," Jesse said. His word came out a harsh whisper. His tone disturbed me. No person was the same after the outbreak, but something about Jesse seemed off. Hysteria seemed to have set into his once warm eyes. His jerky movements made me feel as if he was close to the edge of insanity. This man was not the one I had known in my life prior. I wanted to take Libby and leave as soon as I could, but the streets below were unsafe. I tried to calm my nerves and talk soothingly to the man, giving no indications to my fear other than the bullet already loaded into the chamber. I know I regret it now, but I just wanted to give us enough time to reach the ladder. His hand twitched at his side. "Well, look what you did." He angrily pointed at the street below. When he moved his arm, my gaze drifted to his hip, where a gun poked from waistband. I had noticed it before, however. Now I could see it now in detail. I inhaled a sharp breath as realization soaked in. I grabbed the shotgun, slowly bringing it around to my front. The motion caused his head to snap in my direction. "Where did you get that gun?" I asked, my voice coming out shaky. Anger twisted his face as he grabbed it the same second I took aim with the rifle. Libby stood swiftly at the quick change of our position. The gun he held was my gun, the one that I had given to Paul the night prior. "I found it," Jesse said, his voice coming out in a snarl. The image of Paul running towards me replayed in my mind. His throat slit. "You killed Paul," I said, bothered by how my voice quivered. Jesse shook his head hard, as if he were trying to shake a thought out of his head. His arm twitched again. Nausea rolled up my throat, terrified of this crazed man before me. His face kept twitching, and he jerked again, using his free hand to wipe the sweat from his forehead. I have seen my share of evil men in this world, but something about Jesse was different. That is when I saw it. A trickle of blood running down his forearm, poking out from his sleeve, was just the outline of a bite mark. "You're infected, aren't you, Jesse?" Anger contorted his face again as I said his name. He was on the edge of turning. I could see that now. His twitch movement, his sunken eyes, his pale, sweat-soaked skin. All signs that a person was infected. I placed my hand on the trigger, ready to pull it, well aware that if I fired the then, he would too. We would most likely both go down, and Libby would be alone. However, at least she would be alive. "Don't do this. Please." My voice came out hoarse, pleading. Just then, something shifted in his eye. Clarity. For just a brief moment, the old, kind Jesse I knew was there. "I'm sorry." He looked scared. Then he pulled the gun back, aiming it at his own head, and fired. The force knocked him sideways, and I watched as his body tumbled over the side of the roof. Libby let out a shriek as I stood in silent horror. My hand clamped over my mouth. I ran to the edge, peering over at his disfigured body as it lay 3 stories down. It took only seconds for the horde to surround him and began ripping into his flesh. I stepped back, nearly tripping on thin air. I seen some dark things. I was no stranger to tragedy. However, it was something I could never get used to. The sound of his croaking apology replayed in my mind. Sorry for what? For killing Paul? For not making his bite known sooner? I wondered if he had even known what he had even done to Paul. I know the infection took hold before the person was completely lost, stealing bit by bit until there was nothing left. I knew I would see Jesse again. He would eventually join me in my nightmares, like all the others. Him and Paul would haunt me until I met my own fate one day. The right questions. It's freezing out there, and I have tons of work to do, I say, harsher than I mean. This always happens in my office. My tone sharpens. Frustrations simmer. Little distractions trigger unreasonable anger. Sorry, Nancy says, her voice shrinking to that of a much younger child. This isn't urgent. No one else cares. But it's important. and I've already waited too long. But, Dad, tonight's the supermoon, Nancy pleads. Even with my face buried in my monitors, I see her slumping in disappointment. But it's too dark to see her eyes, begging me to reconsider. This is why I keep my office so dark, to avoid seeing my daughter's heartbreak when she comes in here to distract me. Usually to watch a movie, or play a game, or tell me a funny story about school. But here in my office, I'm always working, always trying to build the life for her and her mom that I never had. My monitors wrap around me, cocooning me in their dim glow as I hunch forward. The progress bar crawls, erratically jumping forward, slipping backward, surging forward again. Like life is struggling to take hold in my application. Like Frankenstein, I can only watch and wait for the creature to decide if it will live or die. When I don't move, the telescope in her hands droops. Her eyes follow it. I said no. I'm working. We'll see the next one. Nancy leaves, closing the door. What stings the most is how quickly she gave up, only asking twice before slinking away. I could follow her, leave the monitor light, navigate the darkness between here and the door. But the office fills the space between Nancy and me with the hum of my computer's fan and its dry heat. The room turns stuffy with the door closed, and I refocus on what's important. She'll understand what's important one day. The progress bar completes. Life has taken hold. All the training data for my new artificial intelligence algorithm, thousands of pages of text, has finally completed processing. Finally can get my answers. I start the AI application, trained to have a specific person's memory, a specific person's personality. The cursor flashes, waits for my first message. I type, "Hi, Dad." "Hello. Have we met before? Is this Peter?" The training data is working. What entry told the AI? My dad, my name. A journal entry from the day I was born. That's a nice thought. At least he was around when I was a little kid. But all that, him being around, ended at 16. "Yes, this is Peter. Great to hear from you. How's Nancy doing in 4th grade? Is the AI being cordial?" Why jump to Nancy? And that was 2 years ago. Is that his last entry about her? His journals were comprehensive, going back 7 decades. But we hadn't talked much since her 4th grade play. Nancy just turned 12. 7th grade is next year. Oh, Nancy is in 7th grade next year. Time slips by. What would you like to talk about? Dad didn't talk like this. Training data from the internet is coming through. It is always there, seeping through his memories. His journals and the internet combine, making something that isn't either, but more than both. Where does Dad stop and the internet hive mind begin? Does it matter? What I need should be in his journals. How could it not be? How could something so important be overlooked? If I ask directly, I'll just get an echo. Like with Nancy's grade. I don't want that. I want a real answer. His answer. After being trained on 70 years of journals, this AI, Dad, must be able to do that. I press my face further into the monitor's light, shutting out everything but me and Dad. The cursor flashes quickly. My breath matches as I swallow back the question I want to ask, and instead ask a simple one I know the answer, and can verify the accuracy. Where did you go when Mom died? He left for an appointment, but he never said what was more important than Mom's deathbed. There had to be a journal entry on the day she died. How could there not be? On May 19th, 1998, I was in Cambridge, Massachusetts, meeting with Pastor Morton. Dad replies, Pastor Morton? Dad never mentioned him. Not that we talked much after Mom. Was I too harsh on him? Was he meeting for religious guidance? I mean, Dad wasn't spiritual, but maybe he just didn't show it. When I was a kid, he never went to church. He'd always say, God isn't what you think it is. Mom would argue, but Dad would just walk away. He'd get distant and wipe his face like he was trying to scrape something off of it whenever the topic came up. He always did that when he was stressed or scared. Who was Pastor Morton? I ask. While Pastor Morton was someone I met with regularly, no further details about who he was exist in my training data. Would you like me to search online? No. I don't want random information, just the data in Dad's training data. Why was that meeting more important than being with my mom? This wasn't the question I really wanted to ask, but again, I need to build to it. I need real answers. The meeting was more important than being with your mom because Pastor Morton knew about the North Atlantic Islands. I try to pull back from the monitor's light, but the darkness tightens, forcing me closer to the screen. The computer's hum, the fan's hypnotic whir, locks my body in place. My pulse matches the cursor's flash. But why? The Northern Atlantic Islands. Dad was stationed there when he first joined the Navy. He never spoke of it, only muttered about the rocky wasteland and the razor-like mountains on the horizon. When I was a kid, once, only once, I asked if he climbed those mountains. Dad turned vampire white, shivered, wiped his face, and stared into the space beyond me, watching something. He whispered, "Those mountains weren't safe. Never climb mountains. You don't know what's on the other side." The cursor flickers. My breath hitches. I shake the memory, flinging it into the heavy darkness, along with the weight of all the things he never said. His answer surprised me. I remember how Dad always pushed me to be outside, hiking or throwing a ball, something more manly than playing with computers. The mountains were off limits, but he always asked about doing something without a screen. When I'd say no, he was as disappointed as Nancy was tonight. Eventually, like her, he stopped, asking, "Turn this off. Now. Turn it off. Shut Dad down. It's not Dad. It's an AI, but it has answers based on his thoughts and memories." The cursor calls me back, flickering, flashing, holding me, pleading for me to ask another question, to ask the question. But thoughts of the northern Atlantic islands crowd out anything else. I don't want to get distracted, but I've never heard much about his deployment. I'm sure the answers were in his journals. So many journals. He wrote every day since he was 15. I read the first entry. Grandma and Grandpa had lost their house, and they lived in a station wagon at an old warehouse lot. Maybe one day I'll read all the entries, but AI gets to the important information faster. So, I built an AI version of Dad based on his journals to get the answers I always needed, but never asked while he was alive. What did Pastor Morton know about the northern Atlantic islands? Dad thought. While it was compiling the information, it reminded me of how Dad would always pause before answering questions, trying to determine how to answer without telling you anything about him. He hid in his answers, carefully ensuring you only saw who he wanted you to see. Pastor Morton is most associated with the night march. The night march? Again, the pause. This one longer. Too long. The fan spun harder, whirring into a banshee scream. Clicking joined the fan, as if speaking to the surrounding darkness, asking permission to share its secrets. Or simply, there was an error in the system, potentially a fatal exception occurring that will kill the AI. The answer sprints across the screen, the fan quieting, the clicking stopping, permission given, the darkness demanding no further delay. The Night March, first referenced in 1976. Here is an excerpt. Liam said it was nothing, but I swear people were marching to those mountains. Hard to tell with that storm last night, and the wind was so hard it shook the base, but I heard chanting. When I went out to check, I couldn't see through the constant spray of rain and ocean waves hitting my face. The storm came from the mountains. I kept wiping it away from my eyes, and, I think I saw flashlights, people beaten by the storm, but moving towards the mountains. I'd have gone out. I'm security, and there ain't supposed to be no one round here. But Liam told me, stay put. Said it was just the storm reflecting the base lights. He was the scientist studying the mountains and beyond, so I listened. I couldn't get the water off my face. It was slick, thicker than water should be. Liam said it was probably oil from a spill somewhere close. Nothing more. But I didn't think it was oil. Too dark for oil. I couldn't sleep after that. Liam kept watching the door closest to the mountain pass. He expected someone to come knocking. My dad watched out the station wagon windows like that, watching for someone to come in the night to take our stuff, to take us. I didn't sleep either. The storm got worse, damaging the base. Growling thunder was too close and getting closer. Liam stared at a picture of his boy all night, nervous, terrified. Chanting kept on, but now sounded like the name of Liam's boy. It kept going for don't know how long, and Liam just kept whispering, "He's safe. He's home." We played cards till morning. There are other entries. Should I expand my answer? The fan goes silent. The cursor slows, pulsing thoughtfully. What did I screw up? I trained the AI to only give me answers from Dad's journals. But this can't be right. It's a ghost story, but what about the night march? What did this have to do with Pastor Morton and my mom? What did Pastor Morton know about the night march? He knew where they were going. Where? To those beyond the mountains. Why? The entities are immortal and could return life after death. They could make any disease, including aging, cease to exist. Cease? I guarantee Dad never referred to anything ceasing. That wasn't in his construction job vocabulary. He'd say it turned to shit, or gave up the ghost. But cease? No. Is this the internet hive mind leaking through his journals, or something else? You aren't talking to Dad. Was there something in his journals? Something he found beyond the mountains? Something the AI brought to life? I turn to another screen, open a search engine, and type Pastor Morton. The fan screams again. The cursor flashes faster. Now an alarm, demanding attention. But I rip my mind from them to see what the internet knows about Pastor Morton. Millions of responses come back, but none are fictional characters. They are all real people, none based in Cambridge. AI can stitch together information incorrectly, presenting fantasy as fact. AI experts call them hallucinations. But really, it is a lie presented as truth. I can't trust Dad's answers. But do I need answers? Or do I just need to ask the right questions? That need suffocates me, presses my nose to the cursor, demanding me to ask about the night march, about what's beyond the mountains. No. Those are not the questions I brought my dad back to life to answer. The fan shrieks, the darkness swallowing the sound into the endless silence beyond my monitors. Was the meeting worth missing Mom's death? Worth ruining our relationship? Dad thought and thought. Maybe the question was too subjective. Does Dad understand the weight of Mom's death? His relationship with me? The cost of all the years he missed, watching me grow up, getting married, having Nancy. After Cambridge, he never told me where he was going. He just disappeared for weeks, sometimes months. Uncle Louis helped me handle Mom's death, standing in for Dad when he should have stood with me. Your mom was dying. Medicine couldn't save her. The night march could help. But I couldn't sacrifice what they wanted for the answers I needed. So I searched for another way. Searched for the questions and answers. What the hell kind of answer is that? A mix of journal data and ghost story. Another damn hallucination. There's nothing I wouldn't have sacrificed for Mom. This is all crap. It can't be Dad's journals. What wouldn't he sacrifice for Mom? Nothing. She was everything to him. The fan screeches again. A siren song. My system straining for attention. To what? The night march. The mountains. The sacrifice. No more distractions. I ask what I need to ask. Were you proud of me? Did you regret abandoning me? Did you love your son? Dad thinks. The thoughts stretch into my relentlessly dark office, pulling me towards the white letters on my black monitor, holding me there, breathless, waiting for what I should have been told, what I should have heard time and time again. From my success at work, from having a house, a good life, a happy wife, a brilliant daughter. I need to hear it after all the long nights at work, all the sacrifices I made to be successful, to prove I did okay without his help, or him just giving a shit. My training data does not have an answer. Should I search online? I shut off the application before it was completed. The fan slows, choking like asthmatic laughter, then dying. In all that training, there was nothing about my life that made him proud. He grew up homeless, and here I am, successful by every measure. And that wasn't noteworthy. Not a single entry. Dad left when Mom died. Off doing whatever, forgetting he had a family right here. He had me. I was important. He couldn't see that. But wait. Maybe something's wrong in the data. Maybe I didn't prepare it properly, or I used the wrong algorithm. I could rerun it. Ask the questions again without the night march junk. I could get real answers this time. This isn't your dad. Let it go. Are there more questions about the night march? Something I need to find there? The fan whirs, its hot, dusty breath inviting me back. There are answers here. I just need Dad to think the right way. I can find answers in his journals. They have to be here. But first, I need to restart my computer. Wipe the slate clean. The screens go dark. I fall back into my chair, released from their dim glow, and land in my office. No more hum of the fans, just stillness. Quiet presses in. The bookshelves beyond my desk emerge from the dark. Out the window, Nancy sits by her telescope. It gazes into the stars, but she stares at the ground, shivering. Where was her jacket? While the computer restarts, I take her one. Kiddo, you need a jacket. I hand her the bulky coat. Should have brought mine. The night is frosty. My breath steams like a monster. I wipe it from my face. "Thanks," she says. "Why are you sitting here?" "Telescope's gotta adjust to the cold," Nancy says. "It's freezing out." I nod as my monitor lights flick on. The restart is complete. My computer calls me back, this time to ask the right questions. "It's probably ready now," Nancy says, defeat, not excitement, in her voice. "It's cold out here," I say. "Why don't you do this when it's warmer?" "Because it's the supermoon. I've been waiting all month for this. It's important." She didn't ask me to stay. She knew the answer. When did she stop asking? My computer was alive and waiting. The cursor light flashes in slow, steady breaths, watching me with Nancy. Quietly, the fan whirs, calling her name. The room beyond the monitors is a void waiting to absorb me. Us. Were the islands that dark? What did Dad see? He went beyond the mountains. Your grandpa was stationed on an island in the Atlantic Ocean. He probably had a good view of the stars. She shrugs. He said there were mountains on the islands. And one night, he saw something strange. The light on my monitor blinks slower, inviting me to tell my story and come back with Nancy. For both of us to ask our questions. The fan kept wheezing, chanting our names. Dad had answers for both of us if we ask the right questions. It wants her to ask, just like it wanted me to. "What did he see?" Nancy asks. "I'm not exactly sure," I say, looking at the stars. I nod towards my office. The monitors dim, welcoming us to the screens. The AI on my computer, built from Grandpa's journals, has answers. We'll look at the stars for a bit. Then we'll talk to him. Together. Nancy nods, confused, but eager. She peers through her telescope at the infinite void of space while I glance toward my office. The darkness recedes from my desk, a slight retreat from the monitor light. Now, there's room for two. Past imperfect W. Mentions of mental and physical abuse. Bill sat bolt upright in the hotel bed, heart pounding to a familiar refrain. The dream had reasserted itself with a vengeance from the moment he'd seen the updated list of people attending the conference. One name had stood out. Dake Scratchard was the name of the boy who'd haunted Bill Brown's life more years than he cared to remember. Dreams fueled by past memories disturbed his nights when equal amounts of dread and fear surged through his veins, rendering him helpless. As always, the nightmare was a variation on a theme. In it, Bill was a teenage boy running from the gang. He often came close to evading capture, but at the last minute tripped over his shoelaces or some other encumbrance. Then he found himself falling flat on his face outside the old school toilets, the inner doors of which rose up like whited sepulchres. Up close, he could see every cell of his tormentor's face. "Ginger needs to be taught a lesson," came out of that hate-filled mouth. A bully, aided by his contemptible band of followers, with their menacing chants of "Ginger, Ginger, Ginger." Even now, their words filled the corridors of his mind like a background hiss. "No!" The sound seemed to come from somewhere outside, as if it belonged to someone else. "Not him. You're just begging for it, Billy Ginger. If the teachers won't correct you, we must do it for them." Billy knew no teacher would come. They were never there when you needed them. In any case, the gang always had some lackey watching out. Soon they'd have him crawling on his hands and knees, scooting about like an insect while they kicked him on the hard stone floor, their mocking jeers running through him. He was nothing more than a piece of meat to be hauled about. For them, the high point was shoving his face into the toilet bowl. The stench was the least of it. Clinging for support, he tried to keep everything tight shut while they flushed. Knowing he could not hold out for long, he spluttered to be let go. Then, just as he was about to give up, a final flush signaled his release. He was pulled up, squirming like a rat from a sewer, and left heaving on the floor. For a few minutes, he lay there curled and defenseless, all resistance gone, until the next time, and the time after that. Something so primal, so feral. He could smell it now. Even after all this time, he was defined by it, as if the abuse had become part of a warped pattern of D and A, making him only half human. But somehow, he'd known he was worth more than that. At least his dog seemed to think so. Through it all, the only thing that kept Bill going was the thought of the black Labrador faithfully waiting in the porch. Back home, Kelpie licked away the wounds and salt tears, stayed beside him till the pain subsided. Without Kelpie, he would not have survived. For the purity of a dog's heart knows no bounds. Switching on the bedside lamp, Bill waited until his breathing steadied. Coughing, he climbed into a dressing gown and stepped out onto a small balcony. In the courtyard below, the air was prescient with a damp chill. A few lone trees were scattering leaves marking the onset of winter. Inhaling a sneaky cigarette, Bill considered his options. It had all happened so long ago, yet the dream had reignited the past, making him feel he could never escape its clutches. If Bill recited the facts of his life enough times, he almost convinced himself of their worth. On paper, he'd worked hard, got married and divorced, and had a son he barely saw. He'd mostly married his wife to please his father because she came from a better background, and look where that had got him. It wasn't his ex's fault if along the way he'd supplemented whatever was missing with a few women he was physically attracted to, but not much else. In the end, It had been like ships passing in the night, all except for Bella. With her, he'd come close to casting a loveless marriage aside. But in the end, something had stopped him. The risk of getting it wrong had been too great, but all that was in the past. Although Bella had recently returned to the company where they both worked, albeit in a less demanding role, he rarely saw her these days. And according to rumors, she was now with someone in the shower. Bill imagined washing the past down the plug hole. Soon he planned to do just that. The only fly in the ointment, of course, was Bella. He wasn't sure whether she'd be attending the conference. Really, bumping into her was the least of his worries. But if he did, so be it. He hadn't actually seen her name on the list of attendees, so it seemed unlikely. Overall, it would be easier if she didn't attend, because that afternoon, Bill was making his first big speech in his new role as Regional Operations Manager. As if there wasn't enough going on without having to deal with affairs of the heart. The speech, eagerly anticipated, was expected to be the highlight of the day. In the hotel room, examining the set of knives his father had given him as an 18th birthday present, Bill was confronted by powerful emotions. Before him were a dazzling array of sharp pieces, all with wooden handles for an extra firm grip. It was almost pleasurable selecting the one with the pointed end. He carefully placed it in a sheath and adding it to a concealed section of his briefcase. In the mirror, he observed hair that was thinning a little at the sides. Other than that, it was still thick and brown, with just a hint of chestnut. Impressive in a well-cut suit, he was tall enough to be considered distinguished. To some, his features might be regarded as handsome. His eyes, however, were preternaturally bright. Sighing deeply, he exited the room. Clutching his laptop and briefcase, he made his way along the plushly carpeted corridor, entered the lift, and headed the 3 floors down to the conference room area. Psyching himself up for whatever lay ahead, he focused on his achievements. Only by drawing on every retail milestone was he able to make sense of the wasteland that was his emotional life. His mind's eye framed the certificates that took pride of place on his home office wall, charting his journey from sales assistant to the coveted role of Regional Operations Manager for one of the country's most successful chain stores. Stores that sold fashionable clothes and accessories for prices most people could afford. Bill's journey into a better life had only really begun when his parents had moved from a London suburb to a city in the Midlands. Then aged 15, he'd welcomed the move with open arms, for it had given him a chance to start afresh in a place where no one knew him, especially at school. He had loved walking unrecognized through the city's streets and visiting its ancient cathedral. One Saturday morning, plucking up courage, He'd walked into one of the city's department stores and landed himself a Saturday job in the menswear department. When he returned home, his mum made him a cup of tea, and Kelpie wagged a warm greeting. You could do a lot worse. They've got people queuing up to get a place in that store, his mum had commented. Then, examining him more closely, she observed, "You've darkened your hair. Isn't that what Elvis Presley did?" "I expect so. I never liked my natural color, and I want to fit in at this school." That was the closest he'd come to admitting the bullying at his old school. He never told anyone about the suicidal thoughts. Chazo. He couldn't miss her. Bella was a figure of light breaking the conference room formality and wearing the most distinctive outfit. To him, she was the classiest person there, surrounded as she was by an adoring team of managers at one of the middle tables. Distracted by her presence, he could hardly wait for a chance to speak to her. The chance came while she was lining up to choose from a tray of canapes during the lunch break. "I wasn't expecting you to be here, Bella," he said. "I wasn't expecting to be here, but there was a change of plan. It's so good to see you." He found himself saying, "Well, I missed the company and the people. I wasn't the right fit for the new position, even if it was a promotion. It seemed fortuitous when my old vacancy came up again." "So, you didn't have a problem with going back to your old role?" "There's no need to avoid using the word demotion. I won't be offended," she laughed. "I came to realize I didn't need all the hassle that goes with a high-powered job. I realized I'd made a mistake, and the opportunity came to rectify it. I want a simple life, especially now I'm single. Don't worry, it's all worked out for the best. He wasn't right for me either." Bill could hardly believe what he was hearing. "It's really good to see you," he said again. "I'm glad you think that," she said, smiling brightly. Catching up with Bella had been great. So much so, watching her sleeping the next morning, Bill had almost forgotten about the other thing. He decided he'd know what to do when the time came. If it came, Bill was pouring coffee when Bella opened her eyes. They were warm, like Kelpie's had once been. "That smells good," she said. "I remembered you like it's strong." The world outside remained foggy and damp, but for the moment, none of that mattered. Fully dressed, Bill joined Bella on the bed. "What's the matter? You look like you've got the world on your shoulders," she said kindly. "Nothing. Just the conference. A lot to think about." But that was only partly true. If only he could tell her what was really on his mind. Part of him wondered whether meeting Bella again was purely coincidental, or a sign he should let the past go, once and for all. He might have said more, but then the phone rang. "Good luck with the speech." "Not that you're going to need it," Bella said, getting up and kissing him. Dad. On the way to the conference room, Bill overheard a conversation between two hotel staff members. "Are the cameras still out?" "Only on the 3rd floor. Also, the ones by the bathroom. They're down, too." "Okay, not good. How long before they are fixed?" "A few hours at most. Maintenance will get it sorted." It won't affect the general running of things. Bill felt almost disappointed to hear the news about the cameras. After his night with Bella, he'd been on the verge of scrapping his original plan. Now fate seemed to be pulling him back. Yet he still hadn't come across his nemesis. Chatting. About 40 minutes into the second day of conference, a man best described as nondescript entered the hall. Head down, he weaved his way to the numbered seat. Bill clocked him, and his heart sank. Something of the man's stance reminded him of Dake Scratchard grown older. But was it him? He couldn't be sure. 2 hours into the conference, during the talk on sustainability, the man scurried towards one of the exits, and all doubt vanished. Shriveled he might be, but it was definitely Scratchard, galvanized into action. Bill left his seat and headed for the nearest exit. Gripping his case so tightly his fingers hurt, he followed the figure until he disappeared into the bathroom. Unless he had to, Bill generally avoided public bathrooms. But this was going to be the exception. Adrenaline flooding through him, he quietly opened the door and stepped inside. Other than a pulsing through his ears and the sound of a dripping tap, all was quiet. Then he heard a retching coming from one of the cubicles. A minute later, the door opened and Scratchard stepped out. Engrossed in his own suffering, he ran to the nearest sink and stood there heaving, watching unobserved. Bill was torn between revulsion and an intense hatred. Mostly, he was seized by a hatred for all he'd been put through, overcome by a rage for the way this pathetic being had ruined so much of his life. It was too late to change his mind now. The die was cast. Gripping the knife, he advanced, his anger rising to a peak. Suddenly, the bathroom door sprang open, and to his astonishment, Bella entered. She came and stood behind him, putting her arms round his waist. Then, opening his fist, she carefully removed the knife from his hand and put it behind her back. "It's not the answer," she whispered, hurriedly placing it in her bag. It all seemed to happen in slow motion. The atmosphere in the room shifted. Startled out of his sickness, Bill's childhood enemy locked eyes with his victim in the mirror. Both men were shaking, one from the effects of illness, the other from the horror of what might have been. "What the hell?" Scratchard broke out. Then there was a flash of recognition as the years fell back. "Surely not. I wasn't sure if it was you in the meeting, probably because your hair is different. But it's Ginger Bill, isn't it? Only the last time I saw you." The words trailed off, vanished into the unknown. "But you never did see me," Bill said through gritted teeth. "All you saw was a weak boy you could bully because of his hair color. As I recall, the last time I saw you and your sick gang, you'd forced my head down the bog. Have you any idea what that does to someone?" "Did I do that?" Dake's face reddened. "I was a bit of a jerk in those days. If it's any consolation, life hasn't exactly treated me well. As you can see, I'm not a well man, the edges blurring. Bill felt the first stirrings of pity. What's actually wrong with you, Scratchard? Calling him by his surname felt like a minor victory. He'd never dared call him anything in school. Dake shook his head despairingly. If it's not one thing, it's another these days. I had heart trouble a few years ago, and now this. I keep having to running to the toilet and have a raging thirst. You need medical attention, Bella said unexpectedly. You're showing all the signs of severe diabetes. My father got like that before he was diagnosed. 10 minutes later, Bill was sitting with his childhood tormentor in the lobby, waiting for assistance. I'm sorry for making your school life hard, Dake muttered, unable to meet Bill's eyes. It was worse than that. You bullied me to the point I didn't feel life was worth living. Why did you? I need to know, Bill demanded. Dake searched what remained of his soul for answers. I don't know, he admitted at last. Maybe it made me feel more in control. Life was miserable at home, and at school, I was somebody in front of the other kids. The rest of the day passed in a blur. But Bill somehow found the strength to get through his talk. He got a good reception at the end, and he couldn't help noticing Bella was clapping the hardest. What made you come into the bathroom like that? He asked her much later. I couldn't believe it when I saw you there. You kept saying his name in your sleep, saying you're dead over and over. I haven't forgotten the nightmares you had when we were together before. Imagine what would have happened if you hadn't appeared, Bella. It doesn't bear thinking about, she said. If you want us to make a go of this, you've got to promise me you're going to get help. The past will always get in the way if you don't. It turned out to be an easy promise to keep. More than a year after that fateful encounter, the terrible dreams are a thing of the past. Though his old enemy is hardly on Bill's Christmas card list, he no longer regards him as a threat. Now Bill dreams of walking through the park with Bella, taking it in turns to throw a ball for their new dog. Somehow, he feels very close to achieving it. My home, now Mitchell. Conroy's Oxfords clacked and heart thumped as he hurried through the settling dusk from something. Since breakfast, the eerie sensation of being watched had intensified with the crawling of his skin. He hadn't seen anyone or heard anything, but he felt it wherever he went. Something was coming, and the darkness was making it bolder. He picked up the pace as he turned into the tree-lined avenue that led to the wrought iron gates of his community. Sticky puddles of sweat beneath his suit urged him on until he reached the keypad, disengaged the lock, and pushed through the gate, letting it slam shut behind him. Not safe. Not yet. That inexplicable belief that he was about to be pounced on carried him across the courtyard, up marble steps, along a plant-filled balcony to his apartment, lights on, door locked. silence, apart from his panting and the banging of the courtyard gate. Or did he imagine that? Rubbing a hand over his mouth, he tried to calm his heart. It didn't work. The unexpected paranoia that had invaded his world when he left the complex that morning remained. But why? He didn't have enemies. He was a real estate agent, single, tax-paying, boring. There was no reason anybody should want to stalk him. Yet even now, in the security of his home, his skin continued to prickle and burn. "What the hell?" he said, slapping his face as he hurried into the hall. I was starting to feel good about things. Why have I suddenly got anxiety? He stopped between the doors that led to his bedroom and bathroom, alongside the mirror on the wall. The oval mirror, with the antique frame intricately carved with twisted vines and writhing dragons. The mirror with the murky, clouded glass. The mirror that had eased his pain and guilt. He needed a fix. He pressed his hands to the wall either side of the antique and lifted his head, then started in surprise at what he found. What? A bump from somewhere in the apartment distracted him, and he spun to face back the way he'd come. The door was open, but he'd locked it, hadn't he? He straightened, stepped away from the wall. "Is someone there?" he called. Silence for a moment. Then, "Yes." A familiar voice caressed him from behind, and a suited arm snaked around his neck. "Thank you for showing me your life. This is my home now." The last thing Mitchell saw before his neck snapped was his reflection in the mirror, where it belonged. Its eyes were charcoal. 5. "Hi, I'm Julia." The speaker, an upbeat woman with long, graying hair, scurried towards him through a cluttered aisle of antiques, a large mirror cradled in her arms. "Looking for anything particular?" "Sorry," the man in the suit with the neatly trimmed goatee replied, stepping back from a grandfather clock. "Just browsing." "Beautiful, isn't he?" The woman nodded at the face of the soldier and his diligent marching hands. "They don't make them like this anymore." "They don't," the man replied, summoning a melancholy smile. "My parents had one like it. It was lost in a fire and, well, whenever I pass an antique store now, I just have to look. But this isn't the one." Turning from the clock, ready to leave, he met the woman's gaze and was staggered. Obsidian gray eyes regarded him from a sallow complexion with an intensity that made him feel weak. "A fire," she cocked her head. "How tragic. If only we could also replace parents." "What?" "Could I interest you in a mirror?" she went on, unperturbed. "I wrangled this job by impressing the owner with my knowledge, but I still need to make a sale. This mirror needs a new home, and I know you'll make a good owner. It's Japanese, pre-Edo. Isn't it beautiful?" As she spoke, she held up the mirror, so he couldn't help but peer into its depths. "Why did you say that?" he asked, as his gaze was sucked into the murky glass. "About parents? Call it intuition." the woman replied. I know when people are hurting, when they shoulder blame. Your parents' house wasn't safe. The wiring needed maintenance. You could have done it. Hey, he said, moving to push the mirror aside, but stopping short. His reflection had juddered, or so he thought, and now it looked liquid and soft. Hating yourself is normal, but you don't have to suffer. The glass in this mirror has special properties. Looking into it for a short time each day can heal the soul. What do you think? Looking into it now, do you feel better? I feel woozy. How did you know? He cut himself off when something in the mirror caught his eye. A door ajar at the bottom of the aisle, a pile of crumpled clothes on the floor, a puddle of what looked like spilled paint. I'll do you a deal, the woman called Julia said, stepping closer and removing the image. Whatever you can afford. Your parents would want you to have it. It will help with the guilt. Just look. That's all you have to do. Look and let it breathe for you. What do you say? Mitchell Conroy found himself removing his wallet as he stared into familiar eyes that somehow put him at ease. Well, it is nice. I like the frame, the engravings. I guess I can help. We have a deal. What the hell happened in there, Detective? Officer Rice, mopping sweat from his forehead, rested his bulk against the open-doored sedan and basked in the glow of its spinning light. Get anything out of the boy? Not much, Detective McCoy replied from the driver's seat, tugging at the hairs in his mustache. He's deeply traumatized, sending him in to be assessed. As he spoke, he watched a patrol car pull away, his eyes on the passenger in the back, the 12-year-old he'd put there a minute before. You reckon he did it? Rice continued. That level of brutality towards his own mother seems impossible. McCoy pushed himself out of the vehicle while Rice refolded his hanky. Nearby, crime scene investigators were wheeling a covered gurney from an apartment block. No signs of a break-in and no evidence of anyone else in the apartment. Kid discovered covered in blood and cowering in the bathroom by the neighbors who found the door open. But why was it open? Rice shrugged. Boy tried to run, but changed his mind, or he went out and came back. What did the neighbors say? Rice tugged a flip pad from the pocket of his sweat-stained shirt. Julia Harrison moved here 6 months ago with her son after her husband left her for another woman. Seems the boy blamed her for the breakup, for not being able to see his dad. She worked long hours. He skipped school. Arguments and raised voices were a regular occurrence, but things seemed to be looking up for her. Neighbors thought she might be seeing someone. Could have been a trigger for the kid. But then we're back to how could he do it? McCoy stared into the gray mid-morning sky, brow creased, as he recalled what the boy had babbled over and over. Any sign of a broken mirror? The pudgy officer frowned. No. He was going on about that when we took him out. Something about his mother breaking a mirror. There's a screw where one could have hung, but what did he say? McCoy pinched his forehead at the onset of a migraine. Crazy stuff. Said his mother did it to herself with glass from a broken mirror. He said it was cursed. Said whenever he looked in it, the person looking back wasn't him. Well, there you have it, Rice said, tucking the pad away. Complete mental break, just when you think you've seen it all. McCoy hummed as he watched the remains of Julia Harrison be loaded into the back of an ambulance. He wasn't so sure. He'd looked into the kid's eyes, recognized his fear. He was telling his truth. Regardless of what had happened in that apartment, there had been a mirror where one was not now, and this case would not be solved till it was found. 3. Hayden, I got a call from the school. They want me to go in, again, stepping around discarded clothes and empty soda cans. Julia opened the curtains in the dimly lit bedroom before turning to her son, who was lying in bed on his phone. Hayden, are you listening? No, he snapped, jumping up and storming out of the room. Why should I? You don't listen to me. You have to go to school, Hayden. It's the law. And it would do you good to make friends. I told you. I'll go to school in Riverton, not here. I hate the mouth-breathing morons in this shithole. All I get is weird looks and whispers. Sending you back to Riverton is not an option. I know you think I'm doing it to punish your father, but that's not it. Your dad is... I don't like saying it, but he can't look after you. He's like a child himself. Don't. The greasy-haired preteen interrupted, stopping dead in the hall. Talk about him like that. I don't mean anything bad, Julia said, coming to stand behind him, wispy strands of gray hair brushing her cheeks. I don't hate him anymore. If I thought he'd be good for you, I'd let you go, but that's not the case. One day you'll understand. God, Hayden, things got so much easier for me when I surrendered my anger. They can for you too. Have you tried looking in the mirror? Jesus Christ. Hayden cast the antique on the wall, a look of disgust. See, you don't listen. I told you, I'm not going near that thing. There's something wrong with it. No, there's not. It's just old. But it does have soothing properties. I know it sounds crazy, but look what it's done for me. I haven't felt this relaxed in years. You have to give it a chance. If it's so good, why did Peterson give it away? Hayden challenged, stomping past the mirror towards the bathroom. Then go and strangle his wife? Why would you still want it after that? We don't know he did that. He was found dead, too. Somebody else could have. That's irrelevant. The mirror was a gift. Just look. Hayden, at the bathroom, groaned when he saw his mother had taken the mirror from the wall and was coming towards him. No, as much as he tried not to look, he couldn't avoid making eye contact with a version of himself that made his skin crawl. Get away! He jabbed his arms out and shoved, causing Julia to stagger into the wall. She yelped, lost her grip, let it drop. Hayden, halfway through the bathroom door, stopped when he heard the smash. "No!" Julia cried, dropping to her knees in a puddle of glass. "What have you?" Tears in her eyes, she looked at her son and saw he was staring at the floor, the frame, the shattered glass. His eyes were wide, his mouth agape. His face had lost all color. Mom, he stuttered, and that's when she put her hand on a fragment of glass and felt it stab her. 200 in her account, 600 rent due, no pay for a week. She slammed the laptop screen down and dropped her head into her hands. Electricity, gas, groceries, TV, internet, phone. So much to pay, so little money, and stuck in this low-paying job, trying to sell antiques to time-wasting browsers. But she didn't have a choice here in worth. All she had was anxiety, a difficult son, and a soon-to-be philandering ex-husband who didn't give a fuck. A lump the size of a rock clogged her throat as tears welled up. What was the answer? Where was the hope? How could she? "Julia," she yelped, and spun towards a man in the door of the office, fear squeezing her heart until she recognized him as Douglas Peterson, one of the few regular browsers who bought. A gentleman, always immaculately dressed, white hair, bushy beard, sad eyes that today looked dark. "Mr. Peterson," she gasped, "you scared me. My apologies. I didn't mean to." "It's fine," Julia said, wiping her eyes as she slipped past him into the shop. "I was in a world of my own. Haven't seen you in a while. How's the book?" She grimaced as the question left her lips. She knew from past conversations he was struggling with a manuscript, his first in years, having once been a mildly successful author. "I gave it up," he said with a wave of a hand. "The masses don't read my existing stories. They certainly don't deserve more." "I'm sorry to hear that." She was, but not surprised. From what she had gathered, he was forcing it, and the process was destructive, not creative. Don't be. Trying to be successful in this day and age is a surefire ticket to despair. You know about that, don't you? "I'm not sure," Julia scoffed. She liked the old guy, but wasn't about to confide in him. "Anyway, there's not much new I can show you, I'm afraid. We did get an armoire that—" "I'm not here for that," Peterson cut her off. "I'm going on a trip with my wife. Before I go, I wanted to give you this." He stooped to retrieve something Julia hadn't noticed, an oval mirror that rested against the counter. Carved vines and dragons twisted together within a tarnished frame that had once been lustrous gold, and its glass was home to murkiness and shadow. Something small to thank you for your kindness these last few months. "That's hardly small." Julia alternated her gaze between Peterson's face and her own staring back from the glass. "I couldn't." "Of course you could. I can't take it with me. And it's a shame to leave it where it won't be of use. It's special, you see. Its glass has soul-cleansing properties. I know that sounds strange, but it's helped me out of more than one hole. And I know you're in a hole, too. It needs a new home. You'd make a good owner. Take it. Look into it. Let it breathe for you. She opened her mouth to object, but her reflection shuddered, like it was shaking its head. And something curiosity, intrigue, made her think twice. Soul cleansing? Well, we all could use some of that. It will make you feel better. Trust me. Take it. It's a gift. That's very nice of you, Mr. Peterson. I don't know what to say, except, why not? 1. Douglas sat in his study, staring into the mirror, his mysterious Japanese mirror, which he'd received as a gift from his archaeologist brother-in-law some weeks before. A timely gift that had freed him from writer's block, imposter syndrome, and depression. It was ugly, with tarnished gold edges and clouded glass. But he didn't care. He didn't care about much anymore. Not his writing, not his savings running out, not his wife, pushing him to betray his ideals by churning out crap. Since the mirror had arrived with a note about how it could nurture and heal strained souls, nothing seemed to matter except the solace he found in its reflection. The more he looked, the more relaxed he felt, and the more certain he became that nothing could interrupt his, "For God's sake, Douglas, stop staring into that thing. You haven't written in days." His wife's reflection appeared behind his, scowling, while his only smiled. "It's okay, Shell. There's no need to write. Not when I have nothing to say." "Well, you better think of something. We need money. I'm sick of scraping by on the pension. You need to write a book. Damn Richard for sending you this hideous thing." What was he thinking? And I can't get in touch with him. It's like he disappeared off the face of the earth. It was a lovely thought, and it's helped me feel better. What are you doing? You're wasting time, she said, taking the mirror off the wall. I'm moving it so you can focus. No, Shelley. You can leave it. It takes away my anxiety and... Stop it. You sound like a child. Get typing. You can do 5,000 words today if... What's that? Douglas, behind, saw what she did. Something inside the glass shifting. Dark shapes swirled. His reflection behind hers warped. Its eyes darkened. It seemed to lean forward, and then, like a mirage, two shimmering arms slithered forth, and silver hands closed around her neck. She screamed and dropped the mirror, and Douglas staggered back as it fell, allowing a blurred form to slip out, an unstable form that was dressed like him, a half-melted form that wore his face. It stepped out of the glass as the mirror landed, its surface rippling and blurring as it broke Shelley's neck. Douglas clutched his chest, and collapsed. The thing that looked like him released his wife, let her crumple to the floor, picked up the mirror. Douglas rolled onto his front, chest tightening, started to crawl towards the door. "Wait," his own voice said, and he loosed a feeble cry. "I want to thank you." The impossible thing, now solid, stepped in his way. It lowered the mirror before him. Its charcoal eyes bored into his soul. "Thank you for showing me your life," it said, and Douglas's head flopped onto his arm. His eyes came to rest on the mirror. Its glass didn't show his reflection, because his reflection was out. "This is my home now." Douglas Peterson's heart gave out, and darkness claimed him. Obscure recollection. "Dad, where are the yams at?" Frankie yelled up the basement stairs. "Behind the peas, son," Dad yelled back. As Frankie walked to turn the light switch off, he looked over at his father's terrible masonry job that he did right after Frankie's 12th birthday. Until recently, the basement had always been a place Frankie's mother and father never allowed them in. The only things down there were various odds and ends, his father's tools and the freezer next to the pantry. Frankie flipped the switch, putting the basement back into darkness again. "Jenny, did Robert tell you what happened at school other day?" asked Frankie. "No, he never calls me anymore," said Jenny. As Mom was mashing the potatoes Dad had cleaned and prepped for her, Frankie handed Dad the yams he requested. "Well, I met Susie. She's in my biology class. She also wants to be an X-ray tech. She is so cool," said Frankie. "Oh, Frankie, another one? What happened to, what's her name?" asked Jenny. "Rebecca," Frankie said somberly. "Yay, what happened to her?" asked Jenny. "I have no idea. She just disappeared. Everything seemed to be going great. Then she just ghosted me," said Frankie. "She probably ran off with someone else. I never liked that girl," said Mom. "Frankie," yelled Robert from the living room. "Come here. I think this is the Lions' year." "Okay, hang on," Frankie yelled back. "Better go and watch the game, son," Dad said. "Yay, okay," replied Frankie. It was Thanksgiving for the Goldsmiths, a real family affair. All the kids were out back with their father, Jenny's husband, playing in the snow. Mom was trying to finish the pies, and Jenny was doing the usual Wordle on her phone. Robert was in the living room watching the game. The usual Thanksgiving chaos. As Frankie went to sit with Robert, there was an abundance of chips, dips, and cakes on the coffee table. "They are killing the Bears," said Robert happily. "What's the score?" asked Frankie. 38-10. It's going to be their year, I swear," said Robert. As Frankie kicked back watching the game with his brother, the kids were on the back deck taking off their snow gear, and Robert started complaining. He was not a kid person. The three siblings were all completely different due to being adopted. However, they were still solid in their bonds with each other, and Robert always kept his opinions to himself. "My name is Frankie Goldsmith. I am here on Thanksgiving telling a story so screwed up, it's hard to tell it without it sounding like a Criminal Minds episode. No, seriously. If I was outside my head, I wouldn't believe it myself. Let's get back to it." Frankie was in college chasing a degree as an X-ray technician. His sister Jenny was the oldest, being in her mid-30s with 3 children. Her husband, James, was a salesman with a local company. He was a good guy who went to work, came home, and enjoyed his simple and organic life. "Everyone to the table! It's time to eat!" yelled Dad. Everyone rushed to the table. Mom's cooking was impeccable. This was one of 3 major meals cooked at the Goldsmiths, that was off the chain delicious. The other two are Easter and Christmas New Year's. All the food was great and unique to its holiday. As they gathered around and sat, Jenny's twins, Lenny and Lucy, started arguing. "I want to sit next to him," shouted Lucy. "No, I am," argued Lenny. "Stop it, you two." "Olivia, you sit next to Paw Paw," James said to his oldest daughter. Lenny and Lucy seemed to argue about everything. We all settled into our seats and grabbed our neighbor's hand so Dad can say grace, which was one of our family traditions. As Dad began, that's when this story goes from 0 to 100 real quick. "Father, as we gather here today, we give thanks to you." Crack. Boom. The front door exploded open, and in rushed at least 30 police officers, fully armed and yelling for everyone to get on the ground. 2 of the officers grabbed the children and rushed them out the hole where our parents' front door used to be. Now, let's pause. You gotta be wondering, what in the hell is going on? Let's back it up just a little bit, like 6 months. We will get back to it, I promise. First, I gotta catch you up some so you understand what the hell is happening. Jenny showed up around 10:30 a.m. to talk to Mom about the new outfits she purchased for Olivia. I was at the table studying for an exam I had later that week. Jenny chatted to Mom about the clothes. Then she started to explain that she saw a TikTok about a cold case that reminded her of a reoccurring dream she had. Mom's face went blank and she asked, "What did you do, Jenny?" "Nothing. What do you mean?" Jenny replied. The room lost all its happy energy as I picked up Mom's vibes. Oblivious, Jenny continued to talk about this TikTok and how she thought it was about her birth parents. "Mom, you said the orphanage told you that my parents were very young and just left me there?" Jenny asked. "Yes, dear. Now enough of this talk. I need to go to the grocery store." "You two lock up if you leave," Mom said. Something was definitely up to something. Mom appeared so rattled as she was fumbling about. She left in such a hurry she forgot to grab her phone. Jenny came over and sat at the table with me. "Frankie, I have to tell you something, but you can't tell Mom and Dad," Jenny said with a serious expression. I nodded and she asked, "Have you ever heard of 23andMe?" "No. What's that?" Frankie asked. "They use DNA to find out your ancestral family tree. I sent off my DNA and discovered that I am from Northern Africa," Jenny said. "Okay, why the sudden interest?" Frankie asked. "That is not important. What is important is that I found out who my birth parents were," Jenny said. "Were?" Frankie asked, puzzled. "Jenny, what is going on?" "Hang on." Jenny got up and walked over to the counter where Mom's phone was and picked it up. She tried to unsuccessfully unlock the phone twice. "What are you doing?" Frankie yelled. "That's Mom's phone." "You are acting crazy." "I got to know for sure, Frankie," Jenny said. Frankie paused a minute, sighed heavily and said, "Try our birth years." The phone unlocked and Jenny started to go through it, and it was all normal stuff. "It doesn't make sense," Jenny said quietly. "Will you tell me what is going on?" "What did you think was going to be on it?" Frankie asked. "Frankie, Mom and Dad kidnapped us," Jenny blurted out. "There is no orphanage. My name is not Jennifer Goldsmith, it's Ada Abimbola. My parents and I went missing 31 years ago." "What? This can't be true. Mom and Dad would not do this," Frankie yelled. "Frankie, I researched it. It's true. I talked to a detective, and we cannot tell them we know. We must act normally. The detective believes there are more children they kidnapped besides me, you and Robert. The police know and discovered who you are too. Jenny said. Frankie knew it was true. As hard as it was to believe, he could feel it. What now? This was all he could think. He walked over and sat on the couch, and Jenny came over and sat next to him, knowing exactly what he was feeling. Betrayal, hurt, and curiosity. Who were these people? Frankie, we must work with the police. James knows all about it, but we cannot tell Robert. Jenny said seriously. The police are watching Mom and Dad. They think they are holding another family now. Can you meet with Detective Hunt? He will explain everything to you. Jenny continued. Okay, now that you are all caught up, what now? Should I leave it alone and just walk away? No, you say? All right, I will finish the story the best way I can, but it doesn't get better. If you're sure? Okay, let's get to it. Just as the two officers brought the children outside, Dad jumped up and ran towards a cabinet. Pop, pop. The police shot him just as he was reaching into the cabinet. Robert kept yelling, "Can someone please tell me what is going on?" I yelled over at him to just do as they say. Mom got onto the floor, and it was obvious by her face that she knew exactly what was going on. The gig was up. As I was lying on the floor, I looked over at Dad, and he was not moving, just bleeding out. I did not feel any remorse. The officers handcuffed Mother and led her out the door. They let the rest of us get up. Jenny, James, and I took Robert over to the couch and told him what was going on. He just sat staring blankly, not saying anything. Life seemed to come to a halt after that. Everything played out exactly like Detective Hunt said, except one detail. They never expected that one. Overlooked detail. The police took Dad, or Thomas Dunning's phone, and found evidence of everything. Information and photos of all the children they abducted, the ones they sold, the parents they killed. In the basement, they found the remains of over 40 bodies behind the block wall, as well as a torture chamber. They also discovered multiple storage units spread across 7 states. There was one thing that Detective Hunt could not figure out until this day, right now. As I tell this story, there is one more loose end. What changed 18 years ago? Why did they change their MO? Detective Hunt cross-referenced everything. Who was helping them abduct these children? That is when I figured it out. Well, it was something I just felt. Do you want to know? Okay, I'll tell you. It has been about 6 months since the takedown. This was the weirdest affair Colorado had ever seen. Jenny, Frankie, and Robert tried to move on, but it was almost impossible because their life was now on every news station. Frankie tried moving twice, with the same result. One day, Robert was visiting, and he and Frankie were talking when it happened. Something Robert said caught Frankie's attention, and he knew. The only way Robert could know that was if he was a part of it. Frankie bought a gun for protection, and he tried to act normally as he went for it. He slid the drawer open as Robert watched. Oh no, it was gone. Frankie looked up and Robert motioned him to sit down. The end? Or was this all an obscure recollection? R.I.P. Michael Brent Haddix. I want to dedicate this one to my brother. At 6:30 p.m. Saturday, my brother passed away. He had been battling liver failure for 2 years. Thanks everyone at Reedsy. You guys really are my friends and colleagues. I found writing and left alcoholism behind. This community has been my therapy to keep me away from this disease. I miss you already, Michael. A night out. It's 1:30 in the morning and the bass is hammering so hard I feel it beat in time with my heart. It could be my adrenaline. No one sees me. I'm invisible to them, I've always had the ability to make myself invisible. Most of my life was spent being invisible to others. It's a hell of a superpower right now. The lights are flashing and the beautiful bodies of strangers are grinding against each other to music. It's an odd mating ritual. I don't understand it. You get dressed up, made up, and go writhe against a stranger in the hopes of either getting laid or a prospect of getting laid at a later date. And maybe, just maybe, this night of painted up grinding on a stranger will lead to a relationship. Isn't that how I got here, though? The bar is backlit, and the bottles glow with ephemeral promises of a good time. The floor is sticky, where hopeful patrons have bumped into each other or tried to maneuver around each other unsuccessfully. Hopes and dreams and promises all spilled out, laid bare, and left as a sticky residue on a dirty floor. I amble through the labyrinth of bodies attempting to make my way to the bathroom. I've been here before, to this club, not this situation, 1,000,000 times before. Wealthy frat boys and the girls that hope to marry them and become trophy wives congregate here. Beautiful people living beautiful Instagram lives, worshiping at the altar of materialism and lust. I used to belong here. Not that I fall into either category of wealthy frat boy or gold digger. I fell in between, a guest by proximity. Being beautiful has its advantages. Yet, even being beautiful, standing out just enough to get the invite, I blend in and go unnoticed. Except by her. She noticed me. Everyone noticed her. Tonight, I'm anything but beautiful. I'm caked in dirt and blood, a backpack on my shoulder. It's dark, and everyone is so self-absorbed or so intent on their mission of hooking up that they don't see me. The bouncer was so busy flirting with a hopeful girl trying to get in that he didn't even see me slip past him and through the door. I know I'm leaving a trail of evidence behind me. Flakes of dried blood and caked mud sloughing off with each step that I take. The vibration of the thrumming bass does nothing to help this. I'm careful to avoid the bar area where it is more lit up and I'm more prone to bump into someone and get noticed. But I'm invisible. I was invisible when I came in upon him tonight too. Her and him. He didn't see me coming. She did though. She always saw me. A group of gorgeous girls come tumbling out of the bathroom. The one in the middle rubs her nose and sniffles. It doesn't take a genius to know why. I move back into the shadows and avoid eye contact. They don't see me. I slip in and thank whichever gods that exist. The bathroom is blissfully empty. I throw the lock in place. Within seconds, someone is pounding on the door. It's ironic that this is where I ended up. It's where it started a year before. Her and I. Escaping into this bathroom, locking the door, her back against the wall. I throw my backpack on the floor and turn the faucet on. She fell in love with me. I fell harder. He never gave her up and refused to let her go. I begin to remove my blood and mud-caked clothes. I take care to put them in the trash can, moving around the other garbage so that they slip to the bottom. He promised her that he would always own her. She would always be his. We took our concerns to the cops. They didn't care. They didn't listen. He never stopped. According to the cops, his feelings were just hurt. He's a good guy with a promising future. He would eventually stop, they said. But he didn't. He wouldn't. I pulled the trash bags from the stalls and put it on top of the pile of garbage, camouflaging my blood and dirt-covered clothes. I stick my head under the faucet and let the hot water run over my scalp and face. The way she touched my face or ran her fingers through my hair. The way she told me I was the most beautiful girl she's ever met. She saw me, really saw me. being seen is a powerful drug. The mud and the blood rinse from my hair and face down the drain with my tears and with my hopes. This is not what I wanted to become. I didn't have a choice. He wouldn't stop. He wouldn't leave her alone. He wouldn't leave us be. I have to hurry and finish cleaning up before the last call. The hot water reminds me of the feeling of his hot blood on my hands. I didn't expect it to flow like that. Viscous and hot, and so much of it. There is more angry pounding on the door, shouting. I need to move faster. My eyes look dead. I watched his eyes as he died, as the light went out. I slick my hair back into a tight knot, reminiscent of an old Robert Palmer video. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Google it. It was iconic a million years ago. I've always loved the classics, so much more raw than today's auto-tuned bullshit. She loved to listen to the classics with me, laugh at the videos as we streamed them on our television. I add my heavy black eye makeup and dark burgundy lipstick. It looks dramatic against the paleness of my face. His face went pale as his eyes went dark and his blood drained so fast. I pull out a thin black tank top and black pants and throw them on. I rub the dirt and blood off of my chunky Doc Martens and throw on my necklaces. I look once more at my hands that just killed a man and dragged his body to a river and dumped him like trash, and make sure to clear any remaining residue from underneath my nails. He shouldn't have tried to do what he was about to do. Not to her. I wouldn't let that happen. He had to know I wouldn't let that happen. He had a death wish. The pounding on the door is getting more intense. I take a wet paper towel and clean up the flakes of mud and blood that fell around me as I cleaned myself up. I double-check that my clothes that I shed cannot be seen in the trash can. I check the sink. I check my makeup. Flawless. I open the door and make my way back through the crowd of angry girls who were made to wait. And she's there, waiting for me, against the bar, just like the first night where it all began. She watched me kill a man, and she is still here for me. She still loves me, because she knows I did it all for her, and I would do it again. The lights come on, letting everyone know it's time to go home. I notice that eyes fall on us, see us, as they adjust to the bright light. The music cuts off. The party is over. She takes my hand, and we make our way out in the crowd. No one will ever know, except for her and I. Cuts like a knife. I look at the sign over the door. Beauville Historical Society, my new home. I am now an artifact, a historical thing. How have I gotten to be this old, this obsolete? Does anyone even use grinding wheels anymore to sharpen things? It has been a long time since I have felt anyone's hands on me. Prior to coming here, I had been sitting in a dusty old barn for years, unused, unloved. That is, until someone decided to move me. A tattooed young man wearing an earring, a stranger to me, threw me in the back of his pickup and brought me here, dropping me off unceremoniously at the front door. He then sped away as if he were relieved to be rid of me. I have to say that hurt my feelings. He slammed me down and didn't even say goodbye before speeding away in his monster truck with the jacked-up wheels and loud muffler. I try to look on the bright side. No use crying. Tears might make my metal frame and seat rust, although my heavy stone will be no worse for the wear. Chin up, I tell myself. At least now that I'm here, occupying a place of honor by the front door, perhaps I will be looked at and admired, if not used. I look around and spot other artifacts nearby, my peers. The first thing I notice is a horse plow, the kind that has a platform, really just a metal square, for its driver to stand upon while he steers the horses. I remember, back in the day, when my master had one just like it, pulled by giant, strong horses, a breed called Percherons. I remember it was a long, slow process. The horses were very strong, but sometimes hard to control. Nevertheless, the plow did a remarkable job, plowing deep, even furrows in the rocky soil. Next to the plow, there is an ancient piano with scrolled curlicues and whorls carved into its polished mahogany woodwork. There is no rhyme or reason to this crazy museum. Outdoor farm equipment is jumbled together with indoor furniture and other sundry items. The piano's deep, dark, polished wood is still in good shape, but the ivory has worn off its keys, making the keyboard look like a person with blackened or missing teeth. I suspect the piano needs tuning. I wonder if it even can be played. It looks like the kind of piano that has been sitting for years in someone's dark basement, with mice possibly making a nest inside. Alongside the piano, I spot a spinning wheel with a foot pedal, an ancient freestanding gas oven and stove with spindly legs, a roll-top desk along with an inkwell and feathered pen missing some of its quills, and other ancient worn items too numerous to mention. Like the spinning wheel, I also have a wheel, a circular, thick, heavy stone. The wheel is activated by a foot pedal, which causes it to spin and sharpen things into a fine point. The person doing the sharpening has to bend down and press the object firmly into my wheel for an extended period of time. It's a little bit like riding a bizarre bicycle. The ride is sometimes long and arduous. The user has to be patient, giving rise to the old saying of keeping one's nose to the grindstone to achieve good results. Back in the day, I was used to sharpen knives, axes, saws, really all kinds of things. It has been a very long time, however, since anyone has used me to sharpen anything. I honestly can't remember the last time I felt cold metal of any kind pressing into my hard stone. I am now over 100 years old, but am still in great shape, if I do say so myself. Still firm, solid. I can still sharpen with the best of them. I stand ready and willing to sharpen whatever comes my way, although I should have learned my lesson based on my past mistakes. I wonder idly if anyone cares about my abilities. What will they write on my informational placard? Will anyone even read it? Every object in the museum has a brief description displayed. I imagine the curator of the museum probably will stick to brief facts. How old I am, who owned me, what kinds of things I sharpened long ago. I think my viewers deserve a more exciting story, however. They deserve to know the truth. I should really write that story myself. Maybe I'm a tad conceited, but I would like everyone to sit up and take notice of what I can do. The results that can be achieved with a sharp tool or weapon. The results you see are really quite astounding and deadly. Once upon a time, a very long time ago, I sharpened something to a very fine, edgy point. That point was used for something dangerous. Although I am proud of my abilities, I must confess that I feel somewhat guilty about the whole thing. I guess you could say I was an accessory to a crime. My master, we called him Big John due to his immense size, came to me one day for service. He bent over me for hours, keeping his nose to the proverbial and actual grindstone, sharpening his favorite knife into a razor-fine point. The knife had a long, hooked blade. He kept it in a black leather sheath in the pocket of his overalls. It didn't look like the kind of knife a farmer should carry. It wasn't a knife for whittling, or cutting branches or barbed wire, or even gutting the catfish that swam in our creek. No, that knife was a weapon he kept in his pocket just in case. Big John was a hothead, you see, the type of man who always believed in carrying a weapon, convinced that he might one day need it. He was also on the prowl, not for a perceived enemy, but for a wife. He was convinced that the farm needed a woman's touch. Convinced he needed to sire some children to carry on his bloodline. He was somewhat of an old-fashioned man, wanting an adoring little woman and a whole passel of children surrounding him, working alongside him on his beloved farm. To achieve his goal, after a long, hard week farming, one Friday night, he took himself off to town, spiffed up in his best overalls. The knife occupied its usual sheath in his pocket. Big John had his eyes on a young barmaid named Sarah. Sarah was the daughter of the tavern's owner. She was a buxom blonde, cheerful and friendly, serving her customers with alacrity and a bright smile. She seemed to be a hard worker, keeping up with the demands of a rowdy, thirsty crowd effortlessly. Clad in a low-cut, frilled blouse and a flouncy skirt, she immediately caught Big John's attention. Being a practical man and a farmer, he noted with approval her broad, childbearing hips, swishing along as she carried a wooden tray filled with heavy steins of beer. Usually she could deflect the wandering hands of intoxicated, grabby men who got overly friendly when she served them their beer and whiskey. One man, in particular, an uptight, prissy banker with a gray comb-over on his bald head, would not take no for an answer. Forgoing her usual politeness, she slammed down his beer and turned hurriedly to leave, knowing that he would undoubtedly try to detain her. Sure enough, the man's whiskey breath was hot in her face, and he grabbed her around the waist. "Stop, sir. I need to get going." She forced a smile to dull her sharp words. "What's your hurry, darling?" he slurred, grasping her tighter. She once again tried pulling away, to no avail. For a man who sat behind a desk all day, his grip was surprisingly firm. Big John, who was sitting one table over, felt fury rising in his chest. He stumbled to his feet and quickly stomped over. "I believe the lady told you to remove your hands, sir." He choked out the last word. In his opinion, the man did not deserve to be treated like a gentleman. The good manners his mama had instilled in him prevailed, however, forcing him to be marginally polite. "What you gonna do about it, farm boy?" the man sneered. Sarah squirmed in the man's grasp, trying to pull herself free. Big John saw red. "Who you calling a boy?" "You, of course," the man said coolly. "I'm no boy." Big John spat. Suddenly, he pulled the knife out from its sheath in his pocket and brandished it menacingly at the banker. The man at last dropped his arms from around the barmaid's waist. "Whoa there, big fella. No need to get violent. Put that thing away." Big John continued to hold the knife. All at once, the banker's hand shot out like lightning, and he knocked the knife away from Big John. The knife clattered to the floor. The bar room was suddenly silent, its customers frozen in stupefied fascination at the scene rapidly unfolding in front of them. Both men bent at once to pick up the knife. Being smaller and more agile, the banker was the first to reach the weapon. He raised it in the air triumphantly, the knife's sharp metal gleaming in the candlelight, emitting an eerie glow. "Give me that back," Big John yelled. "Never!" screamed the banker. The two men were now struggling over the knife, Big John trying unsuccessfully to wrestle it away from the banker, who was surprisingly strong for a skinny, middle-aged desk jockey. In one last desperate attempt, the banker brought the knife down forcefully, stabbing it into Big John's thickly muscled chest. Big John made a horrible gurgling noise and fell heavily to the floor, the blood pooling around him. The metal part of the knife sank deeply into the big man's chest, only its black handle protruding. Yes, my friends, Big John died. I am sorry to say that my sharpening skills led to his demise. I never saw that coming. It still tears me up inside. When I first heard the news, I shed a few tears. Someone had to wipe me off with an old towel. They wondered if the barn roof was leaking at the time. Luckily, I didn't rust. Big John was a good man. May he rest in peace. He was only trying to protect his lady love. Maybe if the knife hadn't been so sharp, he might have lived. But no, he bled out. Like a stuck pig. His parents buried him at the base of the big hill, down by the creek, on the farm, resting on his beloved land, the land he had hoped one day to pass down to his children. Sarah, the barmaid, came to his funeral. The children they might have had together never came to be. The knife, I am sorry to say, was never recovered. I don't know whatever happened to it. I am sure its point is just as sharp to this very day. I still feel guilty about the whole thing. My own pain cuts like that knife. When I do something, I do it right. Big John was the same way. If only he hadn't kept his nose so long to my grindstone. It's possible he just might have lived. Hamster owl. Trigger warning. Crime scene, murder, suggestion of sexual violence. Douglas hadn't felt his stomach stir on the job for years, not since he was green out of the academy. Something about the blood spatter against the kids' toys, though. It had sent his head spinning, dizziness threatening to undermine his hard-won reputation. The bright, dancing geometric shapes that adorned the red-stained sheets and curtains were not helping matters. Thankfully, the girl's body had already been removed. He averted his gaze to the ceiling and traced the lines of the Artex pattern while taking deep breaths and composing himself. Putting his heavy case down in the doorway, he steeled his will and finally stepped inside. Douglas methodically placed his feet on the clean areas of carpet, stepping over the red smears that had been spread all over the room. Slowly, he made his way over to the grim-faced detective, who was already surveying the scene. "If you're gonna lose your lunch, Doug, please do it outside," Bishop remarked, not looking up from where he crouched, picking through the youngster's possessions with the blunt end of a pen. "I'm okay. It just got me for a second. Not seen one this bad since '87 and the Dilby murders down in Reading. I'll be all right." It's a damn shame, that's for sure. Sweet girl, going by all the stuffed animals and posters. My kids got a thing for boy bands too, he said, gesturing around at the walls that looked like they'd been at the business end of a meat grinder. "You've certainly got your work cut out for you, ready for a long night." "Absolutely, sir. It'll be worth every coffee to nail whatever sick son of a bitch could do something like this," Douglas said, his muscles turning from jelly to iron at the resolve his own words invoked. "Good. Well, I'm done here for now. Do your thing and get me the results as fast as you can. The father is in the back of a car already, but he's denying it all, doing a grand job of playing the distraught, loving parent. So, I'll need whatever you can get me to pin him," Bishop said, as he pulled off a pair of sweaty latex gloves and threw them into a hazmat bag in the hallway. "Ever consider it might not have been him and you're torturing a grieving parent?" Douglas asked to his retreating back. "Come on, Doug. How long you been doing this? It's always the dad," the detective said, turning when he reached the top of the stairs. "I'd start with the machete stuck in the bed head if I were you. But hey, I'm not the scientist." Douglas took up his large case, unclasped it, and opened it wide on the floor of the hallway, outside the girl's bedroom door. He pressed his shoulders against one wall to let a beat officer past, and swore under his breath at the close confines. It was almost easier in the woods, although the results were undoubtedly better from inside a sealed home. He snapped on his own gloves, grabbed a Sharpie and a handful of plastic bags and went to work. With a roll of his eyes, he grabbed the machete first. Of course, that was marked vital. Then he gathered all the jewelry she'd been wearing and had been left behind by the morticians. Most of it was plastic, brightly colored and in the shape of butterflies or flowers. He pulled hairs and fibers from the bed and carpet, then combed the room from top to bottom for any dropped items. Nothing turned up. Sheets, clothes, carpet, and curtain swatches all went into larger bags. Even those fundamentals took hours, mostly because he was more fastidious than most. He had lost count of the cases that had been won thanks to his diligence. Having worked with Bishop for almost a decade, he knew all too well that whichever way it went, a grieving father's future rested on his work alone. The detective had already found his man. Sipping a hot coffee from a cardboard cup, he scanned the room from its center. Taking a break had the tendency to reveal more than the close-up work. Sometimes you had to take a step back and think. He marked a Blockbuster video on the desk. He would fill out the forms to get it returned, but he doubted the shop would ever see it again. Once they saw the news, they would probably refuse it anyway. What looked like her diary was tucked under the edge of the mattress. He made a mental note to grab that, and in the same vein, thought to check for any hidey holes in vents or behind furniture. Girls of an age stashed plenty of secrets. His eyes fell on the mountain of stuffed toys, wedged against the dresser and covered in a mist of dried blood droplets. He had avoided it until then, worried it might set off his queasy reaction a second time. While forcing his gaze to wander across it, two beady yellow eyes caught his attention. With a smirk, he put down his coffee, quickly reapplied the gloves, and strode over to greet them. "Well, look at you," he said, pulling out what could only be described as a hamster owl. The freakish chimera stared back at him, almost with its own intent. "Furby, right?" "Oh, woo-woo, whoa!" The demented toy yelled as it came to life in his hands, batting its eyelids and twitching its ears. He almost threw it across the room in surprise, but managed to control the impulse and holding it at a full arm's length, set it down on the girl's desk. "Damn thing!" he yelled to a series of chuckles from the officers stationed outside. He went back to the list of tasks he had assigned himself, but throughout his bagging and tagging, he was constantly assaulted by an unintelligible babbling. The cursed doll would go quiet, and then out of nowhere, at high volume, holler at Douglas. After the third time of jumping out of his skin, he stalked back to the desk in a fury. "I remember the ads for you," he said through gritted teeth, fully aware he was now talking to it. "Remember," it interrupted. "Yes, remember. Very clever. I remember that you are supposed to be smart. Hell, I'm pretty sure there was a ban on you being brought into the station, in case you could listen in on things you shouldn't. Something about spy software or AI even." "Remember!" the Furby squawked again. You don't seem so smart to me. Just a damn novelty. Do me a favor and shut up!" Douglas roared. He turned his back on it, not wanting to waste any more time trying to figure out how to turn it off. He was almost done and was feeling the impatience of the late hour and the clouded thinking it brought. Yet, before he could take a second step, he spun around at the words the toy belted at his back. "You're mine. Bitch." He stood frozen, head cocked to one side and looking into its demon-like eyes. Surely not. "What did you say? Did you remember?" He ventured, not sure if he was pushing the limits of what was reasonable. "Remember, you're mine. Bitch. You can't prance around naked in your window like that and expect me not to want you. I might be your neighbor, but I'm still a man." Douglas shook his head with raised eyebrows, let out a sigh of disbelief, and bagged the toy. He marked it as vital. Hopefully it would be enough.